Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Um, Welcome to Jump Off the Bus. Hope you got your gliders ready to go. Okay, so about me, I'm the Fortnite documentation lead. I have a background in technical writing. I'm a career technical writer. When I started at Epic, it was my first introduction into the video game industry. I started on Unreal Engine documentation and then moved over to Fortnite once Fortnite Creative kind of got spun up and they were like, hey, we need documentation for this. So yeah, and I was around the corner from Carrie at NC State working on my PhD. And then I graduated when I was at Epic and I stayed. So I'm really happy to be here with all of you. So just a brief poll of hands, show real quick. How many of you are actively developing in Fortnite right now? Okay, great. So for those of you who are, the beginning of this will seem pretty familiar, but then in the latter half of the talk, I'm gonna go more into like some of the resources, so hopefully there's things that y'all can pick up. So this is great, but for the rest of you, you are in the right place. All right, so I'm gonna do a brief overview on developing in Fortnite from a high level, so like what are all the tools involved, what's the overall process, that kind of a thing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about devices. If you've been to Josh Grant's talk yesterday, or I'm sure Sam and Florian's talk today, they talked a lot about devices, but I'm going to touch on it, I think, in a different way. And then we're going to talk about your first island, which is a very introductory, beginner workflow that my team just put out. So really excited about that. And then we'll go into a lot of the other learning materials, hands-on content, and then where to go when you need help, because that's my job. Okay. All right, so how does it work? And why should you even care, right? Developing on Fortnite is really great because you have the pre-existing audience built into Fortnite, right? You publish right on there. When the player launches Fortnite, they go through Discover, your island's right there in front of them, okay? It's also really easy to get up and going. It's easy to gray box, to iterate. You know, the nice thing about UEFN and Fortnite is you don't have to worry about the underlying engine framework, right? You're using the Fortnite character and the character movement. You're using the Fortnite physics. So if you really just want to get something going, mock something out, right, put a prototype together, you can do that really quickly using our tools in Fortnite. And of course, we also have the official brand partnerships with Lego, Paramount, the Walking Dead universe, and I'll touch on those throughout this talk too. So there's a lot of different kinds of things that you can play with within the Fortnite ecosystem. The iteration cycle is pretty similar to any other development iteration cycle, right? You open your project or you open an existing project, you design and iterate. We have a lot of free out-of-the-box assets that are available to use, from art assets to audio. And then you can also play test. It's really easy to play test, right? Once you get set up in Creator Portal, which is where you publish from, you don't actually have to be eligible to publish in order to build a team and play test with them. You can generate unlisted island codes that you can share privately and get those play tests going. So it is really flexible in that way. And then, yeah, when you're ready to publish, you publish in Creator Portal. There's also guides and tips and tricks on how to market your island. And then you iterate based on feedback, and then it starts again. So I just want to touch briefly, because I think this is a little obscured, but you actually need 3 tools in order to develop in Fortnite, right? You have to download UEFN, you have to download Fortnite, and then also sign up for the Creator Portal. The reason for that is when you open a live edit session in UEFN, you're actually opening a Fortnite client, okay? So you have to download UEFN, Fortnite, and then the Creator Portal. Okay, devices. So back before there was UEFN and it was just Fortnite Creative, the idea behind it was that we didn't want to require code in order to develop gameplay and gameplay mechanics, right? So devices were the answer to that. A lot of the devices in the early days were generated from Battle Royale, very Battle Royale mechanic heavy things. We see that now even still with like devices coming over from like current seasons, like the bank vault or the armored turret, that kind of stuff. But that's why devices exist in the way that they exist, because they are prepackaged. And so I'll show a little later during the talk today the Fortnite Creative view, where like you'll see the option, the device options, where basically you like toggle things on and off, you toggle the settings. It's a very like WYSIWYG kind of format. What you see is what you get sort of format. So yeah, but that's why devices are the way that they are. Like other folks have mentioned in previous talks, you connect devices together through functions and events. You bind them together through functions, and then they trigger events when certain things happen. They're very flexible, and then even if you're configuring them in UEFN through arrays, when you go into a live edit session, most devices you can still manipulate in a live edit session through creative. So you can go back and forth between the two, but there's also flexibility within the live edit mode. So there's a lot of flexibility with devices, basically, is what I'm saying. Okay, but we also have Verse now too, and Verse is really great. As other folks have been saying, Verse is the language of the metaverse, as we call it at Epic, and it is designed specifically around video game and video game development. And the benefit to Verse is that Verse expands on existing device functionality. So if you're working with a device and you're looking at the API, right, you can add more onto the existing functionality without having to rebuild it all yourself. Or you can create fully customized gameplay using Verse and Verse devices. What I'm showing here is our coordinate battle tutorial. Basically, we had our programmer writers remade Battleship. And this is actually to demonstrate coordinates and how coordinate systems work in UEFN, which is actually really important if you're a more advanced developer or Verse developer, because we just changed from a left-handed system to a right-handed coordinate system. So the verse.com module, Verse APIs all use the left up forward, LUF, which is also relevant to scene graph. So if you're working in scene graph, it also uses LUF. So anyway, point is they made all of this using mostly Verse. So if you're interested in this, it's called Coordinate Battle. You can find the documentation online with the island code. And so this is a more advanced tutorial, but I'll talk about some more beginner stuff. But I think it's really cool. So there's also a bunch of out-of-the-box assets available to you. So this is the really nice thing, right? Is if you're not really an artist and you're like, I just kind of want to see what it looks like. I want to get my vibe going. You know, there's a lot of things that you can just plunk in the level right there. And the benefit of having the connection to Battle Royale is that a lot of the cool, like, I think my favorites are like the Colosseum after the God season, the Greek God season. All the Colosseum stuff came in, and they are just gorgeous. So we get the benefit of all those different kinds of art assets available. You also get individual items, so all of the consumables and the key cards and the slurp juice and all like the fish and the food and everything else. And then, of course, weapons. And in addition to that, within UEFN, you get textures, materials, audio files. So there really is a lot to get you going. And of course, you can always import your own custom assets. But again, if you're just getting started out, if you're just trying to play around and figure out like what you want to do, what vibe you're going for, there's a lot here to help you get started. Okay, so your first island. So this is the introductory workflow that and like tutorial series that my team recently published. What we really wanted to do is we saw a shift from starting in Fortnite Creative and moving into UEFN, where a lot of people were just starting in UEFN, which makes a lot of sense for where we are right now. And so we wanted to build an onboarding and initial experience that really reflected that. And so what we really wanted to do is show, okay, I'm starting in UEFN. I'm starting to build out my gameplay in UEFN, and then what is it like to do a live edit, to play test it, right? And then we actually expand on the check dummy device with Verse, with something that you cannot do with the device as it stands right now. So we added some custom gameplay too. All right, this is a video of the template. So this is available in-game. I'll touch on that in a minute. But you can see it's a very simple shooting gallery. We have good targets that you want to shoot. We have the teddy bears, which are the bad targets, because we don't want to shoot them because they're cute. And if you shoot them, it'll take points away. And then here you can see I'm going into the live edit mode. And you can see that we have all of these informational... I can use the pointer. All of these informational billboards. And so all of our feature example templates, which I'll also talk about more later, all have these information billboards explaining like what the different mechanics are, calling out important elements that you may want to learn about or dig into a bit more. And then I think here I'm gonna briefly pull up the custom verse code. Yeah, the shooting range manager. And then down here is the, where'd my thing go? Yeah, down here is like the good code, the good target, bad target code. So yeah. Okay. And so again, it's really about showing how it all works together, right? UEFN is the core tool, using Fortnite Creative. We talk about in the creative section as well, like how to quickly like gray box and place assets and stuff like that because you have access to the full content browser. And then again, using Verse. And there are 3 ways to build this. If this is something that you're interested in, you can follow the full documentation online. In the documentation, we actually try to contextualize what you're doing so you get a little bit of information of like why you're doing the things that you're doing, as well as the code to copy paste in. We also just launched our video series, which you can complete in a half hour. I'm really proud about that. That will go through the whole tutorial, but not only that, it also has a video dedicated to Creator Portal. And so if you're interested in like maybe just the Creator Portal portion of like how does publishing work, we step through the publishing flow, we show the Creator Portal. So that's a piece of it that you can kind of watch standalone. And then the outro for it, we actually talk about all the learning resources. So like all the stuff I'm going to talk about here, but it's a good refresher. And then, like I said, we have the in-game learning template as well. So you can go in UEFN, open the project, and look under the hood for yourself to see how we put it all together. And then once you complete that, and this may be good for those of you that are already working in Fortnite, is we also added a like next steps for Verse, right? Our next step was like, well, how do we then transition people into using Verse more, into getting used to using the code, because it is really important, right? We keep hearing about scene graph, and scene graph is coming, or it is here, but you know the functionality is still very foundational, right? But it's going to grow over time significantly. And so we really want to encourage people who maybe don't feel like programmers to be confident and to give it a shot, right? And so we built this off of My First Island. So if you go into the editor, you pull up My First Island, you can follow along in this tutorial series to really dig into Verse, how it works in adding not just custom gameplay, but also best practices for code refactoring and commenting and that kind of thing. All right, so hands-on learning materials. So like you just previously saw, right, we have the documentation, we have the video, we have the in-game template. To me, that is like the learning trifecta, right? We have all of these different ways and mediums for you to engage with learning and digging deeper into what Fortnite has to offer. Our feature example templates are really great. I love them. I'm going to show them off a bit more later. But they really give you insight into like how things are done and why we do them. And then with every feature example template, there's always documentation to accompany that. And the earlier templates, the older templates actually have more of like, here's how to rebuild this from scratch. Some of our later ones and like our IP brand templates actually dig in more specifically into the mechanics and extracting like the really interesting bits that the template is trying to showcase, right? And really focusing in a bit more. So that's just how our content has evolved over time. So you'll see a good mix of it in there. And then lastly, we do love our video tutorials. We can't do them for everything, but when we can, it's always like a thumbs up. So this here is Triad Infiltration, which is asymmetrical team gameplay. And so we have a video tutorial for that as well. And all our videos are on FN Create. So, okay. And then this is a whole list of resources that I'm just throwing out there that we have documented, and also some videos as well based on, I'll take a step back, that are based on kind of the programmer, designer, artist track. I'm borrowing from my UE doc friends who are publishing their programmer, designer, art tracks. And I do think it's worth calling out. I'll just go through some of these. Like we do have some really good Verse stuff, like AIs with Stronghold. Scene graph, our scene graph documentation, I think I'm really happy with it so far. You know, we have a lot of really good conceptual information, but there's also like tutorials, like showing you, I think with like moving platforms and stuff like that, so you can see it in action. And then the scene graph feature example template is like a content haul, but it has art examples that show you how to build more art-related like prefabs, and then there's also gameplay as well. So definitely check out, if you haven't checked out the feature example for Scene Graph, you definitely should. And of course, the documentation. And then we have Learn Game Mechanics, which are like more targeted mechanics for documentation. Of course, our verse language reference. And then our Math and UEFN video series. I'm probably going to rename this because I think math is turning a lot of people off. But it's really good. It right now is highlighting transforms. And so it talks about scaling, rotation, translation, and then the coordinate battle was kind of like the next step in that, really digging into the coordinate system. So yeah, so it's a really good series. Designer-wise, I want to call out this is like a content hall example here. User interfaces. Okay, so the user interfaces template is really good. I know in a couple other talks, folks have been like, okay, yeah, so you go into the pop-up HUD device, and then you like do this thing with the widget, and then you go into the HUD control and the HUD message device, and this or whatever. Like the UI feature example has all of that. It has all of that and then some and more. So, and it's updated like every release, every other release. They update it pretty frequently. So definitely, if you want looking into custom UI, definitely check that out. We have some game design best practice stuff. Designing with cameras and controls. Okay, this is really important. So you can place the camera actor in Fortnite, but we have devices that are already pre-bundled with the cameras already set up. And part of that is to have parity with Fortnite Creative. We try to keep that parity as best we can. And so what that means is you have a first-person camera device, like I think Josh mentioned it in his talk, just plunk it in, and it's already pre-configured to go, so that way when the character spawns in, you're already in the first-person view. So there's a first-person camera, side-scroller camera, there's an orthographic camera, I think there's an isometric camera. So definitely make sure you check out the camera devices before you start pulling in the camera actor and doing a bunch of like custom stuff, because you may not need to. Build-A-Game. Build-A-Games are really good. It's an older tutorial series of ours, but it takes some of the more basic Fortnite gameplay modes like 1v1, Zone Wars, Capture the Flag, and builds them from the ground up. So again, if you're just kind of getting started out, you're looking for another place to go after you complete Build Your First Island, some of the Build-A-Games are a good place to go to keep learning the editor, basically. And then art. Okay, so the lighting and day sequence. So lighting is different in UEFN than it is in Unreal Engine. And I totally recommend the feature examples. I think our lighting feature examples are some of my favorites. Like they're incredible. So definitely check those out. Patchwork. Patchwork is I think like Fortnite's first unique system when I think about the systems and tools that are in Unreal Engine. Patchwork is a like plug and play audio system, but it's really neat because you can use it to make like your own soundtrack, or you can reveal all of the devices to players and like let them jam and like let them make their own music and like manipulate it within the world and manipulate the music within the world. So if you're an audio person, definitely check out Patchwork. The last thing I'm going to call out here is the realistic characters, assets, and environments. So GDC 24, I believe, we announced Project Talisman. In UEFN, these are all of the creator-facing assets for Talisman. So we have the environmental template, the meta-human template. That's where all of that content is. So, okay. So now we're going to go in game. So these are sample. The island templates are sample islands. They're basically just empty plots. From mostly Fortnite Creative. You can see there's some variance in the levels, but they're just empty. We do have brand templates, but I'm not going to show those here. What I am going to show are the feature examples. And you can see here that they're broken out by getting started, by game examples, and there's a lot here to learn from. My first island is not here because I took this video before it launched, but I promise my first island is here. So I'm just going to pick out the parkour map. And we're just going to go in. Okay, so you can see that it opens in the viewport. We have some custom billboards here that go with the design. And I think I'm going to zoom around a little bit. I've talked about the billboards. And like, what's cool about the templates is that you can very clearly see, here's all the devices that we use to do this. And then once we start the game, all of this is going to be hidden, right? And it's just going to be a playable experience. Okay, yeah, here we go. So this is a live edit session. That's the custom verse device. They all look like little computers, consoles. Okay, so this is what the device settings look like in Fortnite Creative. As you can see, it has those toggles on it. I'm just gonna go back and pause and then jump ahead. Yeah, so you can see it's got like all the information's there, and then you can toggle between them to select what you want. And like I said, you can make those changes in here and it would affect it back in UEFN as long as it's compatible between the two, which most things are. So I'm moving around in fly mode a little bit. That's how you move around. You can move around more freely when you're in a live edit session or Fortnite Creative. It's the same thing. Okay, now I'm going to start the game. And I'm going to parkour very badly in a moment, but you all get the idea, right? It's very easy and seamless to go between all of these. Okay, and now you can see I have the phone tool out. The phone tool is how in a live edit session you can place anything in your level, whether it's devices or items, prefabs, props, anything. And this is what the content browser looks like from Fortnite Creative. So, and island settings. Island settings you can set in UEFN, you can set them here. So there's a lot of like overlap between the two, but I just wanted to show this because I think it's useful to know like that both of these things exist and there is like a feedback loop between them. Okay, so our brand content. Like I mentioned before, we do have partnerships with certain IP. There's more on the way. What's really neat about these is that you don't have to be signed up for the IP licensing. You don't have to sign the IP licensing agreement in order to access them, just to publish with them. So if you want to check them out, play around, there's a lot of really good information in some of these. Like for Squid Games, if you went to Chen's talk yesterday on Fortnite imposters, at the end of his talk, he talked a lot about like, how do we do this in UEFN, right? A lot of the social deception devices that we launched were part of the Squid Game activation, right? So there's a feedback loop between what IP is doing and how the ecosystem as a whole is benefiting. The bottom one here is from the Walking Dead universe, which is the comics, not the show. And then my favorite, which I worked on, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they added post-processing effects, and this is where we also highlighted the side-scroller device. There's an arcade template where you're like side-scrolling. It's not 2D, but it is a side-scroll arcade game. And then also the other thing with Turtles is this was the first time that we had custom player UI. So if you're interested in like changing up that bit, you can look at the Turtle documentation for that custom UI stuff too. Okay. So hands-on learning, videos. Like I said, I talked about videos earlier. All our videos are on FN Create. We have our first hour in UEFN series, which is very similar to the first hour in Unreal Engine series, but is more of like a holistic tools overview. So if you're already really familiar with Unreal Engine, You might just want to cherry pick the ones. Again, I recommend the environmental lighting. That's what I'm showing here. And then, of course, our math and UEFN, which I might rebrand because math. It's okay. Help! Where do you go when you get stuck? Okay. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about like where to go when you need help, right? There's documentation, there's the snippets and forums. I'm going to talk about what's in the Epic developer community, basically, and then, of course, our developer assistant. Okay, so as a documentation lead, I obviously care very much about this, but our goal is to be the foundation of information in which you can always rely on and trust, and also that we are providing material to you that also inspires you. So when a feature or a system goes live, like we have custom items coming up, we have persona device coming up, we not only want to tell you like, okay, here's how you can configure the settings to do a thing, we also try to make sure to have examples and gameplay content that actually showcases it and where you can see it and you may get ideas and be inspired from. That's one of our big goals, is really to inspire and elevate. We have a lot of information online. I kind of touched on it already a little bit. Something that I did not mention, the Verse and Fortnite data APIs. You can find the API references on here. All of our onboarding and get started information. Also the patch notes. My team manages the process for patch notes, so you can find all of those going all the way back to season 29 on our site. And if you're ever wondering, like, oh, is there a document for this thing or that thing? Look in the patch notes, because we're usually pretty good about linking documentation with features that go live as they go live. Or if we miss it, we fast follow. Or if we're adding new stuff that isn't really tied to a particular feature, there's always a section for documentation there. So always be on the lookout there for new learning materials. Okay, ways to search. So there's several different ways that you can search for information, particularly within the documentation. Obviously, there's Google search. I'm very proud of the fact that we have very good SEO. This is like one of my jobs. And so usually, if there's a documentation page for it, it will show up in like the top 3 to 5 search results. Okay, filtering. Okay, so the sidebar there is filtering by document title. So if you know what you're looking for, I think this is really useful for devices. I do this for devices all the time. I'm like, oh, I need the player spawner doc real quick. And I just type in player spawner and then boom, it comes up. So that filters. And then we've moved on to the top search bar up here. This searches all of the EDC. Yeah, so you can see here that we have all the filters for all the different communities. So this is searching all of the EDC. Because I typed in devices, it put the Fortnite stuff first, but sometimes depending on what you type, you'll get the Unreal Engine stuff, you'll get the C++ reference stuff. So yeah, it's searching everything. Which, like, all of this applies to UE docs as well, by the way. We're all there, fab. Everything except for some of the online services stuff. But anyway, okay, so the developer assistant. So the developer assistant is trained off of documentation, which is why it always recommends documentation for like where it's getting its information from. We also train it on snippets and all the game examples that we make. So my team actively feeds into this. And the explanations are pretty good. So we're pretty happy with it so far. Still training, still working on it, but so far, at least for UEFN, it's pretty good. Verse is really challenging because it's so new. It's only been around for 2 years. It doesn't have the same, depth that like C++ has. So I think the C++ code might be a bit more reliable than the Verse stuff, but it's always better to start from something than nothing, in my opinion. So, Snippets, speaking of code, we do have Epic staff that do post snippets into the snippets repository, so make sure to check that out. And then forums. Forums are really great for not only connecting with community, obviously, but also getting feedback to Epic. Whenever there's a documentation like, hey, this thing is broken, or this thing doesn't quite work the way that it should, or whatever, from a document, I see that. So yeah, so if you ever have any questions about docs or feedback or this thing doesn't work, like if you post it in forums, like I do see it. So keep doing that. Okay, so in sum, All right, so what can Fortnite do for me? And by me, I mean you. So the great thing about Fortnite, like I said, is that you don't have to worry about the framework or infrastructure of the engine portion, right? You don't have to set up the multiplayer. You don't have to set up the physics. You can just kind of build on top of that infrastructural and framework layer to just make the gameplay that you want to make, right? And that's really nice. So it's great for iterating. It's great for just messing around, figuring out ideas. But also, if you want to build your own brand, your own IP, we have creators that do that. We also have creators, I think several folks here, that work with other brands and other vendors, including Epic. Most of our IP content that we launch, when we launch, we usually launch the creator tools, but also a playable experience. And normally we're working with small UEFN studios to do that. So from that angle, there's a lot of opportunity as well. And then, of course, fostering relationships with outside brands as well, like Nike Airforia, Coachella. I mean, there's a ton of examples. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for you. There's a lot of opportunity for your team. It just depends on, what you're looking for. Okay, so just to reiterate, you should jump in because it's easy to gray box, easy to get going. You have a ton of stuff out of the box for free. Devices are really easy to manipulate and get going. And again, if you need more, you can expand on it with the Verse API or make your own Verse device. Built-in functionality, and then access to millions of players. So the Creator Portal, I didn't really talk about Creator Portal that much here, but Creator Portal also has a lot of really robust functionality that already exists in analytics and team management. And of course, we announced recently direct monetization, which will be managed through the Creator Portal, Sponsored Row, which will be managed through the Creator Portal. So there's a lot of really good creator-oriented functions and administrative functions to enable you and your team for success as well. And that's it. So thank you very much.